Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be looking at how reading can help you improve your English skills.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, and we've got some really cool examples. We've got a bunch of different books we're going to be looking at from different genres, some classics, some newer stuff, and even a story about a famous author who actually learned English by reading.
Interesting.
So I thought we could kick things off by talking about The Wind in the Willows. It's this delightful little book set in the English countryside.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's great. And, it's actually written in pretty simple language, which makes it a great choice for English learners. But even though the language is simple, it's still really rich and evocative.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so good for learning. You can pick up new vocabulary and grammar naturally without feeling like you're studying.
Right. Like you're just enjoying the story and the language is kind of seeping in.
Yeah, exactly. And The Wind in the Willows is full of these wonderful descriptions of nature. Like you can practically smell the fresh air and hear the birds singing just by reading the words.
That's true. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about a more serious book, To Kill a Mockingbird. This is another classic that's often recommended for English learners, and for good reason. I mean, the vocabulary is rich, but it's also a really powerful story about prejudice and injustice in America.
Absolutely. And I think To Kill a Mockingbird is a great example of how you can learn not just vocabulary, but also cultural understanding through reading. The book is set in the American South in the 1930s, and it really immerses you in that time and place.
Right, you're not just learning words, you're learning about a whole different culture and way of life.
And that's so important for really mastering a language, to be able to understand the nuances and the context behind the words.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about a classic children's book and a classic American novel. Let's lighten things up a bit with something a little more humorous. Bill Bryson's Notes from a Small Island. This book is a hilarious account of Bryson's travels through Britain, and it's full of witty observations and funny anecdotes.
Oh, Bryson is a master of language. His writing is so accessible and engaging, and he has this way of using everyday language in a really clever and funny way.
Exactly. And, even though he's writing about British culture, his humor is pretty universal. So I think even if you're not familiar with Britain, you'll still find this book really enjoyable.
Oh, for sure. And, reading a book like this is a great way to learn about different cultures without even realizing it. You're picking up on all these little cultural references and idioms just by following along with Bryson's journey.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've had some laughs now. Let's get back to focusing on comprehension with the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. This book is written from the perspective of a teenage boy with autism, and it's told in a very straightforward and literal style.
Yes, and I think that makes it a really valuable tool for English learners. Because the language is so clear and concise, it's easy to follow the story and understand the meaning.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
the narrator's voice is so unique and engaging that you almost forget you're reading a book about a kid with autism. You're just swept up in the story.
That's true. And I think this book is also a great example of how authors can use language to create different effects. The way Haddon writes really reflects the narrator's way of thinking and seeing the world.
Right. It's like you're getting a glimpse inside his mind.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about fiction, but sometimes you need something a little more practical, and that's where practical English usage comes in.
Yes. This is like the Bible for English learners.
It is. And it's not just a dry grammar book. It's actually full of really useful explanations and examples of how to use English correctly.
Exactly. It's like having a personal English tutor right there in your hands.
And it covers everything from grammar and vocabulary to pronunciation and style.
It's a one-stop shop for all your English needs. So, we've talked about all these different books, but I think the most important thing is to find something that you enjoy reading.
I agree. Reading should be a pleasure, not a chore.
Exactly. If you're not enjoying the book, you're not going to learn as much.
Right. You're more likely to give up if it's not holding your interest.
And, there's so many great books out there in English. So there's really no excuse not to find something that you'll love.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure where to start, you can always ask a librarian or a teacher for recommendations.
Or even just browse through the shelves at a bookstore and see what catches your eye.
Right. And don't be afraid to try something new. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Yeah, like that story about Hisham Matar learning English by listening to Jane Austen audiobooks. Like, who would have thought?
I know. But it just goes to show that there are so many different ways to learn English, and the best way is the way that works for you.
Exactly. So that's our deep dive on reading for better English. I hope you found it helpful and that you're inspired to pick up a book and start reading.
Me too. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun. So find something that you enjoy and just dive in.
And who knows? Maybe you'll even discover your next favorite book.
You never know. So happy reading, everyone.
Until next time.